What should be on your translator CV? Coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. This week's topic on the channel is CVs, more specifically freelance translator CVs. Now there have been many comments on the channel about CVs or resumes in general in the last year, and my answer to almost all of them were always good question, but I have to do more research about that because honestly I don't know much about CVs and what actually should be in there. Now I've finally done this research and I can bring you this video about translator CVs. The reason why all my answers were along the lines of I don't know, I have to do more research is because I'm not actually a big fan of CVs for translators. That's because that has several reasons. One is because I prefer LinkedIn. I think it's a priority, it's superior, it's basically a digital CV anyways, right? So I can't even remember when I've last used my actual CV, right? It must have been years ago. Another reason for that is because I want to establish myself as a service provider, right? Not as someone who's applying for a job. And you wouldn't ask a CV from your plumber or from your accountant or something, right? And I want to portray this similar esteem when people are contacting me. So I would rather provide my marketing material, for example, my flyers, my website, my LinkedIn, etc. So I would much rather score a job through this than through actually CVs. But I am aware that it's still very much needed, especially for agencies. If you work with direct clients, you will probably never need a CV, but that's besides the point. Most of you guys work with agencies, and I also prefer to work with agencies. I am aware that it's still needed. That's why it's also an important question, especially when you're starting out. One very important tip that I want to give straight away about CVs is keep it simple, right? There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Whether you're a freelancer or an employed person, there are just certain things, certain standardized things on a CV that need to be there and certain things that don't need to be there. That's always the same. Your CV should definitely start with contact information about yourself, right? Then it should be followed by the experience, the professional experience, and then by the education. So this is the given part that just needs to be in there. What comes after, you can customize for like a translator CVs to specific things about translators. That's fine, but the first part needs to be there. Make sure you start with your latest or with your most recent experience. That's probably freelance translator will be there, right? And then you go back in years about your experience. The same with education, always the most recent one on top and then go back. Make sure to only include the relevant work experience, right? Don't go back to 20 years ago when you worked as a waiter. That's not relevant. Unless you specialize in gastronomy or hospitality, then it becomes suddenly relevant to be a waiter, right? Or to work in a hotel or a restaurant, then you can include it. But if you don't specialize in this, it's not relevant, so you can be kicked out. In the experience section, it makes sense to include keywords or bullet points under the certain job experiences about what you've done. Just a little section about what were your tasks, but keep it concise. That counts for the whole document. No one reads multiple page CVs, right? That just gets discarded. Try to fit it on one page. That's very hard. So ideally have it on 2 pages, but never more. So mine is 2 pages and that's perfect. Just never more than 2. If you can fit it on 1, that's even better. One thing you should really keep in mind when you write your CV is ask yourself always the question, is this relevant? Does this add value to the recipient of the CV, right? And this question is not always straight to the point, right? It can vary. It depends on who you send the CV to. So you have to have your recipient in mind. If you apply to a job at the bank, for example, you want to include that your hobbies are traveling and meditation or whatever. But if you apply to a travel agency or something more spiritual, then you should include this, right? And play with this more emotional and spiritual aspect. So you always have to keep in mind who reads your CV. It's very important. Especially the part after the standardized part that I just mentioned, where you can actually customize things. There it's so important that you tailor it to the specific job or the specific company that you apply to. So let's say if you apply to an agency, you most likely include your cut tools that you're using, right? If you're using STL, MemoQ, SmartCat, whatever you want to use, or you can use, you would include there in a little section, cut tools. But if you apply to a direct client, they probably have no idea about cut tools, right? And they are not interested in that, most likely. I mean, if they have a specific localization department, then maybe, but otherwise, no, you wouldn't include that for a direct client. But since we will most likely use CVs in an agency context more than with direct clients, let's focus on an example where we just address an agency, right? It's the easiest part. So let's focus on that. Just a quick reminder, make sure your standardized part is exactly in line with your LinkedIn, right? You can't have experiences on LinkedIn and then not on your CV or vice versa. They need to match perfectly, even with the wording. Make sure it's exactly the same. Just use your LinkedIn. If you have a proper LinkedIn, just use it as a template and put the standardized part exactly like this in your CV. Then you're already half done and it's quite easy to do, right? And then we come to the second part that you can actually customize. And I've received a lot of questions over the year, just, asking, does this part belong in my CV? Should I put this on my CV, this and this? So let's just go through a couple of these questions and I tell you what I think, whether you should include it in your CV or whether you shouldn't. So let's start with cut tools. As I mentioned, yes. If you use them, put them in your CV, which ones you use, which one you have experience with. It's very important to know for an agency. Specializations, definitely include them, right? If you have good specializations, even if you don't have good ones, just include them anyways, right? It's important. That should be a separate section. You can even in your title, if you're really specialized, you can even in your title already say, I'm a German chemistry translator, whatever, really focus on that if you're very specialized. Then source and target language definitely needs to be in there. That's your bread and butter. That's what you work with, right? Your target language is probably your native one. Some people have more than one, but mostly people just have one. And your source language, you probably have more than one. Sample translations, no, they don't belong in a CV, right? That's something completely different. If people are interested in samples, you can offer them, you can tell them, if you want, I can send you samples, but they don't belong in a CV. That would just make it way too long and the document would be too wordy and no one would read them, right? Sample translations don't belong in a CV. Moving on to achievements. That's an interesting one, actually. I haven't really seen any achievements on CVs, but I'm not completely opposed to it. I think it could be interesting. Maybe on the side, somehow in a design kind of way, you could have kind of like maybe circles or bullets with special achievements that you've done. For example, I don't know, if you've worked for a major worldwide event, for example, you were the translator for that, that would be great on a CV in a kind of a specially designed circle, for example. Hobbies, I wrote possibly, but rather not. Me personally, I don't like including hobbies. I think it's quite corny and quite, it seems not very professional, but as I said before, it all depends on the recipient of the CV. You have to kind of feel how they are about more social, emotional aspects of the person-to-person interaction. But if it's a very strictly professional relationship, then I wouldn't include hobbies. A box of summary, very interesting. I think, yes, I would include a box of summary. In my CV, by the way, now I learned about all these things and I revamped completely my CV. It was quite shit before, but now I'm more happy with it. And I included a box of summary because I think it's quite eye-catching, and there is one box with everything in it. And then if you're interested, you can go through the actual CV. So box of summary, yes. How many words you've translated in your life? That's a hard no for me. I think that's a very old-fashioned thing. It used to be on translators' CVs all the time, how many millions of words you've translated in a year or in your lifetime. But it's a completely arbitrary number. It doesn't really say anything about your abilities, about your experience. It's a no for me, definitely not include that. And a photo, a picture, definitely yes. Images, faces always build trust, right? Definitely put a big photo in there that's really eye-catching and makes the reader interested in you and wants to know more about who you are. When it comes to the design of the CV, don't go over the top, but also don't be too shy in using colors and design structure, etc. Because just a plain white CV with just black text on it is very boring, and some people don't even include a picture, so it looks like a letter, right? And no one wants to read that. So play a bit with color, be subtle, be gentle, but use it a bit and use a nice font that's appealing to the reader. You can find a lot of research online about which font is appealing and attention grabbing and wants the reader to read more. There are certain fonts that deter the reader from reading, so you don't want to use these fonts. You can do a quick Google search and they will tell you what font is good to use for CVs. There are plenty of templates, of course, online, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel again. You can just look up a CV template, make it your own a bit. Don't use the first template of Word, for example, because probably recruiters receive this template all the time, right? And I will also include a template down in the description that you can probably download or just edit in Google Docs or something. But also there, make sure to make it your own, right? Don't just copy things. I've seen a couple of LinkedIn profiles that now look exactly like mine since I made the LinkedIn video, right? I'm not saying this is bad. You can do that, of course, but just make sure you customize something to make it your own. You want to be your own identity in the space, right? You don't want to just use the same complete same template that everyone else uses. That doesn't make you unique, because in the end, keep in mind, you're trying to stand out with something so standardized as a CV, and it's hard to make something that's a bit different from other people, right? Make sure to have it proofread by someone that's not you yourself, right? Give it to someone to proofread it. Even if you think it's perfect, that's fine. Even if they don't correct anything, that's fine. But you can't afford one single mistake, especially as a translator, right? It's just important. Have it read by someone to make sure. If you want to have it multilingual, that's a great idea. You can have it in all your source languages, for example, but also there, make sure to give it to an actual native translator in this language, right? I have my CV in French, but I would never have translated this into French myself, even though that's my source language, but I'm not a French translator. Also, my website, I had this translated by an actual French translator. So it's important, I think, because we don't want to make the same mistakes that some of our clients make by saying, yeah, you know, I speak English, so I just translated it myself, and then it looks shit. So you really want to be a better example of that. And one last little thing I like to do in terms of design, you almost exclusively send your CVs digitally via email, right? What I like to do is you can easily just hyperlink a little icon next to your name, for example. You can add the LinkedIn logo, you can add the website logo, etc., and then hyperlink it with your actual profile. And I think it looks kind of cool because they open the CV, they see your name and then the logo next to it. If you click on it, you directly go to the LinkedIn. It makes it very interactive, very professional. When I was revamping my CV, I figured it out, and I think it's quite a nice addition you can try out. There you go, that's all my tips. And as I said, I researched this now over the summer, and I hope it makes sense for you guys and you can actually use this. The template I made is in the description. You can download it and make it your own. Try to customize it to specific customers and jobs, and hopefully it will be successful for you. So thanks so much for checking out the video, and while you download, make sure to subscribe and like the video. It helps a lot. And I see you next Monday with the next one. Bye bye.